We're going to work today on measurement conversions. We're going to work first with the customary system and then with the metric system. And you may think, well, this seems like an odd thing to be doing with a unit on proportions, but you'll see in just a moment it's really not such an odd thing. So the first thing we need to think about, and this is in our term notebooks, there's a unit or a lesson on customary measurement on page 56, so you're going to need to be taking notes there. So the first thing we think about is conversion factors. Conversion factors are what's at the top of that page. Things like 1 foot equals 12 inches, 1 year equals 12 months, things like 1 mile equals 1,760 yards. Those are conversion factors. Conversion factors are used to show the relationship between two different units. They are used to convert measurements, can be, and they're generally written as a fraction when they're used to convert measurements. And more specifically, we would probably write them this way. So for example, if we look at 1 foot equals 12 inches, we would probably think about writing them in a bridge map to help us. 1 foot equals 12 inches. Now, when you see that, you should go, oh, wait a minute. Okay, now I sort of see why we're doing it with this unit. So let's look at some examples. It says use rates or proportions to change between units of measurement. Put the conversion factor in the middle of your bridge map. So the numbers are going to go in the middle, the units in the beginning part. So we're looking 5 yards. We want to change 5 yards into inches. You've probably learned how to do this before, and you've learned something along the lines of you either have to multiply or divide by a certain number, but a lot of times people forget or can't figure out if they're supposed to multiply or if they're supposed to divide. So this method will help you not to have that issue. So that's why I really like it. So the first thing we need to do is identify our conversion factor. When I say identify the conversion factor, what I mean is look for the relationship or how many of one of these units equals the other one. So how many inches equal a yard or how many yards equal an inch. And if you look for that, what you'll find is 1 yard equals 36 inches. So that's what's going to go in the first section of our bridge map. 1 yard equals 36 inches. So that's the ratio of yards to inches. 1 yard is 36 inches. What we want to know is 5 yards equals how many inches. The 5 is going to have to go on top, and the reason it has to go on top is because it's a number of yards, and we put yards on the top. And we want to know how many inches that equals. So that's what we're looking for. That's what's going to go on the bottom, how many inches. There are a couple of ways we could solve this problem. We could solve it using a conversion factor, or using a scale factor rather. Since 1 times 5 is 5, we could do 36 times 5 and get 180. And so we know that 5 yards equals 180 inches. You also could do this using cross multiply and then divide. Cross multiply the 36 and the 5, divide by 1, and it gives you your answer. So 36 times 5 divided by 1 also equals 180. Now, I want to point out, sometimes people say, okay, that's great, but how did you know what to put on the top and what to put on the bottom? And the answer is, it doesn't really matter. What does matter is that you pay attention to where you put the numbers. Once you start, you have to make sure you're putting the numbers in the right spots. So if I did it this way instead, if I said there are 36 inches in 1 foot, how many inches in 36 inches in 1 yard, not feet, sorry. 36 inches in 1 yard, how many inches in 5 yards? Let me fix that. I'm making all sorts of mistakes today. How many inches in 5 yards? So notice that, again, I would still do the same thing. I still have a scale factor of 5, or I could still cross multiply and then divide, and that would be 5 times 36 divided by 1, which would still give me 180. So the key is to make sure that whatever you do, you preserve the order and put the numbers where they belong based on where you put the units. Let's look at another example. 336 ounces equals how many pounds? The scale factor that we need for this one is that 1 pound equals 16 ounces. So we're going to set this one up. 1 pound equals 16 ounces. And again, I could put 16 ounces equals 1 pound and put the 16 in the ounces on the top, the 1 in the pound on the bottom. It's okay as long as you make sure that everything is in the right place, that everything on top matches, everything on bottom matches. They're all for the same unit. So then when I set up the last part of this, 336 in the way I've set it up is going to have to go on the bottom because it's a number of ounces. And I want to know how many pounds that equals. To solve this one, since I can't easily see my scale factor, I can't do 16 times anything in my head to get 336, I'm just going to cross multiply and divide. So 336 times 1 divided by 16. And when I do that, I'm going to get 21. So 336 ounces equals 21 pounds. All right, let's look at another example. So the next one I want to look at is actually this one. 6 quarts equals how many fluid ounces? Now, we don't have a conversion factor in our notes for this. So I want you to add this in an empty page in the back. Find an empty page in the back, and it's take probably about half a page maybe. But I want you to do the big G. The big G stands for gallon. And so this represents 1 gallon. And things we know 1 gallon is equal to 4 quarts. So I'm going to put 4 Q's inside to stand for quarts. Now, then what do we know about a quart? Well, a quart is equal to 2 pints. So I'm going to put 2 P's in each Q to stand for the 2 pints in each quart. Now, you maybe can see where I'm going with this, because before I go any further, hopefully you can see then if 4 quarts equal 1 gallon, then I can see that there are 8 pints in 1 gallon because there are 8 of the P's here in 1 gallon. And I can go further and say, well, each pint has 2 cups in it. So right now I can see there's 4 cups in a quart. And as I continue, I could see that there are a total of 16 cups in a gallon. And then I'm going to add one more thing. There are 8 fluid ounces in a cup. So I'm going to put an 8 inside each of those C's. And so now this is going to help me to find the conversion factor between any two customary capacity measurements that I want to find it for. So for example, if I looked at 1 pint, I could say, well, I know 1 pint is equal to either 2 cups or 16 fluid ounces. And I know that because there's 2 C's, which stand for the cups, so either 2 cups or 16 fluid ounces, because 8 times 2, the 8 stand for the fluid ounces, 8 times 2 is 16. I can look and say, well, if I look at 1 quart, 1 quart is equal to 2 pints, or 1 quart is equal to 4 cups, or 1 quart is equal to 4 times 8, which is 32 fluid ounces. And that's actually the fact that I need to solve this conversion we were looking at. 1 quart equals 32 fluid ounces. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up. 1 quart equals 32 fluid ounces. So 6 quarts equals how many fluid ounces? And again, pay attention to how you're setting that up. Everything on the top had to be quarts. Everything on the bottom has to be fluid ounces. If I switch the units, I have to also switch the numbers. I can easily solve this one using a scale factor. 1 times 6 is 6, so I can do 32 times 6. And when I do, I'm going to get 192. So 6 quarts equals 192 fluid ounces. All right, take a moment and try this last one on your own. And when you think you have got it, then go ahead and pause while you're working. And when you think you've got it, hit play and see if you were correct. So I got 720 months, and I got that if you look at my bridge map, because I said 1 year is equal to 12 months. Therefore, 60 years is equal to how many months? And I used 60 as my scale factor to solve that. I could have also cross-simplified or cross-multiplied and then divided. 12 times 60 divided by 1. All All right, now that we've kind of looked at the customary system, we're going to switch over to the metric system. Now, the metric system is a different system of measurement. It's not the same as customary. You're probably more used to the customary system because that's what we typically use, what your average person in the United States uses. But the metric system is used actually by the majority of people in the world, at least to a great extent. So, and somewhat in the United States as well. So the metric system is a different type of system. We would not use proportions to solve this. You could use proportions to solve this, but it's just as easy to use another method to do this. And that's why that's one of the benefits of the metric system. So looking at this, you may have heard this saying before, or something similar. King Henry died unexpectedly drinking chocolate milk. This is a mnemonic, what's called a mnemonic device. A mnemonic device means something that doesn't relate to the topic at all, but it helps you remember something about a topic. So the K in king stands for kilo. The H in Henry stands for hecto. The D in died stands for deca. U stands for unit. D stands for deci. C for centi, and M for milli. And so when we look at the metric system, the biggest thing I want you to know first is that these meter, liter, and gram, these are our basic units of metric measurement. And all of the other units of metric measurement are made based on these units. So for example, a kilometer is made from combining the prefix kilo with the word meter. So kilo means 1,000. So a kilometer is 1,000 meters. A kiloliter is 1,000 liters. A kilogram would be 1,000 grams. Hecto means 100. So a hectometer would be 100 meters. A hectoliter would be 100 liters. A hectogram would be 100 grams, so forth and so on. A deca means 10, and so those would be 10. Decameter is 10 meters, decaliter is 10 liters, decagram is 10 grams. And then the ones on the other side are, and unit is 1, so 1 meter, 1 liter, 1 gram. Deci is 1/10, so a decimeter is 1/10 of 1 meter. A deciliter is 1/10 of a liter. A decigram is 1/10 of a gram. Centi stands for 1/100th, so centimeter would be 1/100th of a meter. Centiliter is 100th of a liter, and a centigram is 100th of a gram. Milli stands for 1,000th. Millimeter is 1/1,000th of a meter. A milliliter is 1/1,000th of a liter, and a milligram is 1,000th of a milligram. Sometimes people get confused about the deca and the deci because they're so similar. One thing I remember, or try to remember, is that the ones on the right-hand side of the unit all end in I, and so that helps me keep up with it. All right, so let's look at how we actually use this. Now, our first example that we're going to look at is 1,600. We're going to do 1,600 milligrams equals how many grams? Let's write that in something we can see a little bit better. 1,600 milligrams equals how many grams? Now, we could do this like we did the others with a bridge map, because we could say, based on what we see from our chart up here, that a milligram, so 1 milligram equals 1/1,000th of a gram. So 1,600 milligrams would equal how many grams? And we could multiply by 1 and 6/10, or by 1,600 here. Or we could cross multiply and then divide. But either way that you do it, you're going to get 1 and 6/10, which comes from 1.600. We don't need those two zeros on the end. So 1 and 6/10 would be our answer. Well, you might notice that really all we did when we did that was move the decimal. And that's the thing about the metric system, is the easiest way to do the conversions is actually just to move the decimals. So then the question becomes, well, how many places and in what direction do I move the decimal? Well, let's look at how we figure that out. So what we say to ourselves is we say, okay, King Henry died unexpectedly drinking chocolate milk. And I sometimes will do this, the DA, so I remember that's deca, and the other D is just deci. And this is meters, liters, grams. So when I look at this, for the first one, 1,600 milligrams equals how many grams? I know that milli is going to be here. And I want to get it to be here at the unit because I want grams. So to do that, I think about this like a game. I have to jump 1, 2, 3 places to the left. So I say, well, 3 places to the left, that's exactly how many places I'm going to need to move my decimal. So I take the decimal in 1,600, which every whole number has a decimal at the right-hand side, and I pick up that decimal and I move it 1, 2, 3 places to the left, just like I just said to do. So 1,600 becomes 1 6/10 grams. And I could put the zeros on the end, but I usually cut them off because I really don't need them. All right, so the next one, I have 3/100ths of a kilogram. So kilo is here and gram is here. And to get there, so gram is a unit, remember? So to get there, I have to move 1, 2, 3 places to the right. So that's what I'm going to do with my decimal. I'm going to move it 3 places to the right. So watch when I do that. 1, 2, 3 places. So my new decimal's here. My old decimal's gone. So I need to put something in that empty spot because there's an empty spot and I'm going to have to put a 0 in there to fill it. So I could write it like this, but notice I really don't need that 0 in the front, so I probably wouldn't write it. And then I can put the decimal here after it, or I don't have to put the decimal there. It's okay to leave it there, but you don't need it because it's a whole number. You don't really need decimals at the end of whole numbers. Even though they are there, they're just typically invisible. We just don't normally write them. All right, so our next one, we have how many kilometers in 7 meters. So this time we're using the number 7, which has a decimal at the end of it, and we're changing from meters to kilometers. So King Henry died unexpectedly drinking chocolate milk. Meters to kilometers. It's really important to notice we're changing from meters to kilometers, not kilometers to meters, because the 7 is a number of meters. So meters is at the unit, and we're changing to kilometers. So I have to go 1, 2, 3 to the left. So pick up my decimal and move 1, 2, 3 to the left. Here's my new decimal, cross out the old one. And any empty spaces I have to fill with a 0. So I end up with 7/1000ths of a kilometer. All right, let's try one more example. 8 deciliters equals how many milliliters? So remember, deca is this one right here. So 8 has a decimal on the right-hand side of it. And I need to go from deciliters to milliliters. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 places to the right. So I pick up my decimal and move 1, 2, 3, 4 places to the right. My decimal's now here instead of here. And I fill in these 4 spots with zeros. So I end up with 80,000 milliliters. 8 deciliters equals 80,000 milliliters. All right, you have a few more in your term notebook. Take a moment and try those, and pause while you do. And once you have tried them, check and see if you were correct. Hit play to see if you were correct. All right, here were your correct answers. Again, the key is to use your King Henry. Use that idea to see how many places you need to move your decimal and in which direction you need to move it. If you missed any of those, go back and look at them and see, is it because you moved in the wrong direction? Is it because you didn't put a 0 in where you should have? Is it because you moved the wrong number of places? So take a look at it and see if you can figure out what you did. We will look at changing, sometimes the question comes up, well, can you change feet into meters, for example? Yes, you can, but we're not going to do that today. So you can change between systems, but today our focus has been simply on changing customary to customary and metric to metric.